If you're an artist on social media trying to get exposure for your work, you probably know that the social media landscape has changed a lot in the last year. In particular, we saw a big change to Instagram's algorithm that, for the most part, impacted a lot of artists negatively. Myself and a lot of the artists that I know all experienced huge drops in engagement on their Instagram over the past year. And at the same time, we saw some new apps come up like Kara, which is an app for artists, and Blue Sky, which is an alternative to Twitter. So there are some new apps in the landscape that are trying to make up for the changes to Instagram. But overall, I think that these changes can be difficult for artists to navigate. And as an artist, you might be wondering, how can I get exposure? How can I get my work seen in 2025? How can I use these apps in a way without going crazy trying to follow all of the trends and jump through all the hoops that apps like Instagram present? So in this video, I want to go into some of the challenges that have come up recently for artists and how I am trying to adopt a more sane social media strategy that is sustainable for me as an artist, that helps me connect with the art community, and that still helps get exposure for my art. But before we get into it, just a quick note. If you like my videos, then you can see them early and ad-free on my Patreon. My Patreons also get access to exclusive content and behind-the-scenes videos. So if you want to see more, be sure to check it out. Okay, now let's talk about social media. So what happened with social media last year? Why did Instagram suddenly change? For many years, Instagram was a great way for artists to get exposure, to grow their accounts, and to show their work to millions of people across the whole world. I joined Instagram, or I really started posting my art to Instagram in 2020, and I was able to quickly grow my account from under 1,000 followers to over 75,000. But I noticed last year my follower count really started to plateau, and I've been stuck at 75,000 for basically the past year after experiencing many years of consistent growth. My art didn't change, my work didn't change. If anything, it's gotten better. And yet, the more I try to post, the more I try to grow my account, the less I get in return. And here's the thing, I think Instagram saw the success of TikTok and is trying to emulate their model. So in the past, you would have followers on Instagram and they would see whatever you were posting. But TikTok sort of broke that mold. TikTok realized that they could create an algorithm that predicted what you would like to see more than you knew yourself. So it suddenly doesn't matter who you follow anymore. TikTok is going to suggest accounts for you, and they found that model works really well. Instagram saw their success, and now they're trying to do the same thing. So an account like mine, which has 75,000 followers, if I make a post, it might be seen by only a few percent of my total following. This has led some people to proclaim the death of the follower, that followers don't really matter anymore. And what matters is making really entertaining content that's funny, that's engaging, like memes and stuff like that, that can be easily shared. But the problem is, this type of TikTok content really doesn't work well for a lot of us fine artists. If we're making slow, thoughtful content, if we want to post still photos of our artwork, it really doesn't lend itself well towards this entertainment model. So what are artists to do? We can look at different apps. For example, we can try apps like Kara and Blue Sky, which I mentioned earlier, and I did give those apps a try, and I made a video on my early experience with Kara last year. But unfortunately, I found that neither of those apps were able to get a critical mass of the art community over there. Not just artists, but I'm also talking about museums, galleries, and collectors, parts of the art community that are really important, especially for fine artists. They just weren't moving over to these new apps. Artists who are interested in making more long-form content can come over here to YouTube and make videos like what I'm doing now. I think YouTube is really great for artists because it allows us to make longer videos. And so if you like slower content that takes more time to get people into it and has the potential for deeper engagement with people, I think that YouTube is a really great platform. Plus, YouTube has been around for many years, and it doesn't seem to go through all of these crazy changes to the algorithm that Instagram does that causes these huge fluctuations. At least in my experience posting videos the past few years on YouTube, there haven't been many major changes to the platform, and that I really like. That being said, many artists don't have the time to be posting regularly to YouTube and still want to engage with people through short form content or still photos. So what's a good way to do that? The final option outside of Instagram is LinkedIn. I've been posting my work to LinkedIn recently, and while I don't get as much exposure as I would get on Instagram in the past, I do get my art exposed to a broad audience of people, and they're, I think, a different group of people than who is on my Instagram. So LinkedIn has been a nice way to get a little bit more exposure and to network with people in a different way. That being said, I think LinkedIn is ideal for people who are full-time artists. It can be a little bit tricky if you have a job and that's your main focus on LinkedIn. I think it can be hard to find a balance between what content to post there, whether you post about your day job or you post about your art. But I do know artists who have day jobs and who post about both on their LinkedIn. So I think it's up to you whether or not you want to go that route, but it can be a good way to connect with more people. So there are these other apps, but I feel like none of them has fully replaced Instagram, or at least what Instagram used to be. And Instagram still has a very large art community on there. So for me, although I've thought about leaving Instagram entirely, there's so many reasons and so much frustration I've had with the app. And of course, if you're concerned about your art being trained on AI models or other issues with intellectual property, I mean, those are important and valid concerns. But I still think that Instagram offers enough value to keep using it. But I think it's important to use it in a way that is sustainable, in a way that feels good, and in a way where you feel like you're using Instagram and not the other way around. Rather than jumping through hoops and trying to change up your content and trying to post a lot of memes that don't feel authentic, I think it's possible to find a way to make Instagram work for you. So what am I doing now on Instagram? My focus on Instagram has gone away from trying to grow my account and more towards focusing on building stronger relationships with the people I already interact with on the account, and also focusing more on how the app can promote local social interactions. So what does this mean? The first thing it means is that I actually unfollowed a lot of people that I don't actually know in person or I cannot potentially meet in the future. So there were a lot of artists that I liked on Instagram that I found inspiring, but they were artists who live far away. They're people who I don't actually know. Maybe they have huge accounts and I probably will never actually get to interact with them. And so most of these people I just unfollowed. And at first I was hesitant to do this because I liked following their accounts to see the work that they were making. I found it inspiring, but I've actually found a lot of benefits to just focusing on artists who I actually know or who live close by. My idea was to make the app social again. And by cutting down on all these other artists I was following and really focusing on who I wanted to follow and whose work I wanted to see, that meant that when I would be scrolling through my feed, I would see a lot more local artwork. So art by artists who I know live in my area, and also what local galleries were posting too. And this means that I'm much more up to date on which new shows are coming up in my area and what the artists around me are working on. And as a result, when I see their work and I see what they're working on, or I see they have a show coming up, then sometimes I'll take that as an opportunity to reach out. Either I'll tell them what I think about their recent work, how I like it, or I'll reach out if they have a show coming up and say, hey, I'm really excited about this and I hope to see you at the opening. So rather than using Instagram as a place where I'm just trying to grow and I'm just trying to show my work, I'm using it as a way to help connect me with other artists in my area and sort of lead to in-person interactions with those artists and those galleries. Another thing I like to do is that when I go to openings or when I go to studio visits with artists, I'll take pictures and then I share them to my Instagram stories. And I find that artists and galleries oftentimes really appreciate this. It shows them that you're interested in their work, it helps promote their work to a broader audience, and if they're a gallery that you're really interested in, then they get the sense that, oh, this artist is coming to my shows, they're seeing what I'm doing, they know what this gallery is about. And I think that's really important if you want to be working with this gallery in the future. Because most galleries won't let you submit your work to them. But if you post about one of their shows to Instagram, it's a nice way to promote that gallery. And it's sort of like a soft touch point where they realize like, oh, there's this artist, they're coming out. And maybe they'll even take a peek at your Instagram profile and see what kind of work you do. It's a nice way to lightly stay connected with galleries and artists without being overbearing. Oftentimes when I post these stories, the gallery doesn't directly respond to me, or maybe they'll just give it a like. And so I wasn't sure if this was having a big impact, but then later I was talking to one of the gallerists whose shows I visit often, and they actually said, "Hey, thank you so much for posting about the shows and for coming out often. We really appreciate it." So even if they're not actively responding to your stories, they do see what you're doing and they do appreciate it. So that's one way that I'm using Instagram. I'm trying to make it more social. And if you don't live in a big city, it might be hard to find local artists to follow. So there are other things that you can try. First, you can look for arts organizations or join an arts organization like Oil Painters of America, or in California, we have the California Art Club. And then you can try to connect with other members who are part of that organization. So even though they don't live near you, they are connected to an organization that you're a part of, and you could potentially meet them at shows that the organization holds or conferences or things like that. So for people who don't live in a big city, I think that these are great options to still emphasize the social nature of social media. Remember, we want to try to use these online connections and online interactions to turn into something offline. And then the other way that I'm using my Instagram is as a simple, easy to show online portfolio or a sort of business card. When I go to openings, sometimes people will ask me for my card, but more often than not, they ask to see my Instagram. And so I find it still helpful to keep my Instagram up to date, to continue to post my best work to my grid so that when people do ask me about my work, I can quickly pull it up and show them some good examples. In this sense, it's really important to keep your grid really clean and make sure that the work that you're proudest of is towards the top of the grid. You can do this by pinning your work or even reposting some of your favorite paintings, so they're always towards the top. This also means don't post any personal photos to your grid if you want to be using it as your business card. Leave those personal photos for things like your stories. Then when someone wants to see your Instagram and see examples of your work, it's really easy to pull it up, they can see your profile, and you can show them what you do. So that's how I've been responding to all of the changes that have happened in social media recently. And I hope that this has given you some ideas on how you can proactively use Instagram and social media as a tool without getting exhausted or overwhelmed. If you have any tips on how you like to use Instagram and social media, please share them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you liked it, be sure to subscribe to my channel. And a huge shout out to my supporters on Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting these videos and making them happen. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.